A Christian cannot live in the past. The Germans had an old soldier one time, an old cavalryman, and that old boy, when he gave signals for movements of troops, he didn't have any signal for a retreat. Somebody asked him one time, they said, one of his drummer boys, can you beat a retreat? That is a thing on the drums that indicates a retreat in battle. And he said, our general never taught us a retreat. He was called Old Forverts. And he went forward, he was leading cavalry in the action at 80 years old. Let us therefore be perfect and thus minded, and in anything be otherwise minded. They don't think that way. Then God shall reveal even this to you. Nevertheless, he says, whereunto we have already attained your present growth in Christ, which should be a good bit better than it was when you first got saved. That is, you were told to grow in grace and knowledge of the Lord. You're not to remain a baby forever, what he called babes in Christ. You're to grow up. He says, wherefore be followers together of me. And then he says, and mark them which walk so as ye have us for an example. Now look at that remarkable thing there. That's a man telling you to follow him. How many times I've heard that, I don't know. But almost every young man that comes through here and gets out and getting God's work gets accosted by some backslidden, jealous, fruitful, barren, conservative preacher who says you're following a man, you're following a man, you're following a man. Well, that depends what man you're following. Paul said, follow me, and then another passage says, Christ says, follow me. Follow Christ and Paul. But Paul's a sinner. And he says, be a follower of me as I am a follower of Christ. You really holy people are so godly that you worry about people following men. How you doing? You following Paul? Come on, give us a word of testimony. He never preached in a church building a day in his life. He was a street preacher his whole life. Is that you? He said, follow me as I am a follower of Christ. Christ never preached in a church building the whole time he was on this earth, 3.5 years, preaching in a ministry. Do you follow them, do you? Of course you don't. You just talk like you know what you're talking about. You talk about nothing. If Paul said, follow me as I'm a follower of Christ, and said, do what I do and say what I say, and he says that again in the same epistle, then what are you doing making fun of street preachers? It was one that told you to follow him. Got a problem there, Doc, do you? Let me ask you something. How many of you saved lawyers and saved doctors, and some of you doctors and lawyers are saved, how many of you would dare preach on the street one time and have anybody know it? Why, it cost you moolac, boy. It's bread, lettuce, baby. I mean, the love of money is the root. You wouldn't dare try it. You say, why? Because Paul commanded it. Brethren, be followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as you have us for an example. And he was a street preacher all his life. And you're what? Don't kid us, go kid your grandmother.